Guys, and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron, and welcome back today to another video. Thought we'd sit down today and provide a little bit of an update on Joshua Zirkzee, along with some other transfer rumours that have been ongoing over the last week or so. Obviously we're coming up now into the last week of the January transfer window. It hasn't been a very busy one whatsoever for Everton Football Club. Of course, we've seen Jared Branthwaite join Blackburn Rovers on loan, and Ellis Sims more recently joined Blackpool, scored a couple of goals last night, and is actually in this week's League One Team of the Week, so a massive congratulations to Ellis Sims for that. But we haven't really seen any other business, and we haven't seen many solid transfer rumours either, to be honest. Of course, we've had the stuff regarding Tosun potentially leaving, Bernard also. We've had some stuff on John Joe Kenny, which we're going to go in on today's video as well. And we've had the rumours regarding Joshua Zirkzee and the potential of Everton bringing him in on loan until the end of the season to provide some cover for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But overall, as a whole, it's been quite a quiet transfer window. It's not been one that's been very exciting for Evertonians or football in general. Not much has happened, to be perfectly honest with you. There hasn't been that massive January transfer move that, you know, sometimes we've seen over the years, but there has been a couple of updates, so I thought we'd sit down today in video format and discuss them. It saves doing it all on the weekly news roundup and having a 45-minute conversation about Joshua Zirkzee there. I thought, you know what, it's match day. Everton play at 8:15 against Leicester City today, a massive game, so I thought we'd sit down before it and we'd talk transfers, of course, given the fact that there's not long left in the transfer window now, and if Everton are wanting to do business both with incoming players and outgoing players, then it's going to have to be within the next couple of days or so, or the next week or so at least, before the window ends. Obviously, Marcel Brands did come out a couple of weeks ago at Everton's AGM and say that we aren't looking specifically at bringing any players in, and the focus for this window is about moving players out who are, you know, going on to their next adventure in their career. Carlo Ancelotti was also asked about transfers in his pre-game press conference yesterday, and he said there is no news. I'm happy with the squad at the moment, and at the moment there isn't any news. He said he doesn't deal with that. That's left to the people who deal with that, assuming he's talking about Marcel Brands. But there have been a couple of more rumours regarding Joshua Zirkzee specifically over the last 24 hours or so, and they are coming from quite reliable sources that you do sort of sit up and listen to when they come out with information. This one seems a little bit like, you know, an opportunity has arose for Everton and we're going to take that opportunity, but again, it seems like a 50-50 regarding Joshua Zirkzee at the moment. So let's get straight into it. Fabrizio Romano has put out a tweet today, actually tweeted a couple of days ago as well, regarding both Everton and Parma still being interested in Joshua Zirkzee. But he's put a tweet up more recently, earlier on today, saying that Everton and Parma are still working to sign Joshua Zirkzee. The race is open. Talks are at the final stage with Bayern Munich. Parma are offering Zirkzee the chance to be a regular in their starting 11. Everton have offered a different project for him. It is a work in progress. Now, this is after another report and another rumour coming from Max Bielefeld of Sky Sports and Sky in Germany, who a couple of days ago said that it's a straight race between Everton and Parma. Both clubs have made a formal bid of over 10 million euros, which is includes a loan and then an obligation or an option to buy at the end of it, and the player would be happy with both options. So both transfer rumours there, one coming from a very reliable Fabrizio Romano, of course. We all know in the past has got an awful lot of transfer rumours correct. He also did say, I think, on his podcast about a week or so ago, the reason as to why Everton are keeping this quiet is because basically they don't want to make it public information, but, you know, they are sort of actively pursuing Joshua Zirkzee, but it's not being made aware of just yet. And like I said, Max Bielefeld as well, sort of putting out a story that is very, very similar to Fabrizio Romano in terms of it's a straight race between Everton and Parma. This one's 50-50 for me. Look, I think Joshua Zirkzee is the only player Everton could sign this transfer window. If we don't sign Joshua Zirkzee and he ends up moving to Parma or staying at Bayern Munich, whichever his choice is, if we don't end up signing Joshua Zirkzee, I don't think we'll sign anybody else. I think he's the only player that we're interested in bringing in on a loan deal in terms of offering cover for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. There's been a couple of rumours regarding Tosun leaving the football club, which we'll talk about a little bit later on as well. But like I said, I think this one's a 50-50, to be honest with you, in terms of what the player wants. If he wants first-team football instantly, then Palmer's probably the best option, because let's be honest, Everton aren't going to be able to offer him first-team football instantly. He's going to have to work his way into the team. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is our number one striker, and rightly so. So whoever comes in, be it Joshua Zirkzee or anybody else, they're going to probably have to start on the bench and work their way and show in training that they're good enough to be starting in the Premier League, whereas it's already been made clear from Fabrizio Romano that if he does move to Palmer, they have offered him the chance to be a regular first teamer in their starting 11, so there won't necessarily be that work. He'll still have to work hard at Palmer, of course, and press on the training ground, but there'll be a lot more opportunities for first team football, it appears. However, Everton have offered him a different style of project, so I think the way this works is that Palmer have offered him instant first team football and opportunities from the off, but maybe not as big of a wage, or maybe not as big of a transfer deal to Bayern Munich at the end of it. And Everton have basically said, yeah, you're not guaranteed first team football because we've got Dom and you need to work your way into it, but there's a long-term project there. He's probably going to be paid a little bit more than he will be at Palmer. There's probably going to be a little bit bigger of a transfer fee to Bayern Munich from Everton, and he's obviously got the opportunity to work under Carlo Ancelotti and play in the Premier League. So I think the Palmer deal appears to be more of an instant, right, you can come in on loan and you're going to be playing week in, week out, and then we'll address where we are at the end of the season, whereas the Everton deal is more of, yes, you're going to be coming in and you mightn't be playing week in, week out from the off, but we've got this project, this 2-3 year plan or whatever, and we're looking to bring you in on a loan and then sign you permanently, and you're going to be the player that works off Dominic Calvert-Lewin and challenges Dominic Calvert-Lewin for the number one spot. Like Max Bielefeld said, according to him, the player is happy with both options, and Bayern Munich are now sort of deciding with the player on which decision is to be made. And I suppose this one again falls with Bayern Munich as well, and where they see Joshua Zirkzee's future, because if Bayern Munich are looking at this thinking, right, okay, we want to sell Joshua Zirkzee, we want to get rid of him, we want him to go out on loan for the remainder of the season, and then we'll sell him off from an obligation to buy or an option to buy, or we'll look to sell him in the summer, get him off the wages, etc. And if they're looking at that, then yeah, the Everton deal and the Everton option of maybe not getting guaranteed first team football straight away doesn't really come into it, because ultimately at the end of the day they're looking to sell him anyway. They're looking to move him on, they're looking to make some money back on him by selling him on a permanent deal. But if Bayern Munich are looking at this thinking, well, we want to keep hold of Joshua Zirkzee, he's a good young talent, we want to see how he develops, we want him to get involved in the Bundesliga, we want him to be part of our future, then they're probably going to look at the Palmer deal and think, well, that's more beneficial for us, because he's going to go there, he's going to play first team football, he's going to get the opportunities, and then he's going to come back at the end of it a little bit more experienced, and good to go in the Bundesliga, or he's going to come back and then we can determine whether he needs another loan or not. The fact that Fabrizio Romano and Max Bielefeld, a little bit in more detail, are saying that there's obligations and options to buy within the deal, and that there's a £10 million fee there. That was coming from Max Bielefeld. Makes me think that Bayern Munich's maybe intentions are to sell Joshua Zirkzee in the long run, be it at the moment in this transfer window or in the summer, and therefore the fact that Everton have, put forward a project and not necessarily first team football from the off, but almost the opportunity to grow and play in the Premier League and play under Carlo Ancelotti, and like I said, work your way up towards playing first team football. It makes me think that that is a realistic option, because like I said, if Bayern Munich were just looking to loan him out to get some experience, look at what Everton have done with Ellis Sims, for example. Ellis Sims has gone out on loan to Blackpool. There's not going to be an option to buy. They might try and buy him at the end of the season if he's had a good season, but there's not going to be an option there, and Everton are going to look at Ellis Sims at the end of the season and think, right, okay, you're going to come back in, we're going to address where you're at, and the hope is that he then has some part to play in the first team, be it back up to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, or be it challenging Dominic Calvert-Lewin, or whatever. The plan at the moment for Ellis Sims isn't for him to go out on loan and then be sold at the end of it. It's for him to go out on loan to get some experience and then to come back to Everton with that experience. So if Bayern Munich are looking at Joshua Zirkzee thinking that's what we want to do with him, then Everton aren't probably the best option, because he's going to come to Everton on loan. He'll get game time and he'll get opportunities, but he won't be starting week in, week out like he will be at Parma, and then ultimately he's going to go back to Germany in the summer. So they'll look at it and think, well, we may as well loan him to Parma in the Serie A, another competitive league, and at least we know he's guaranteed game time. But like I said, if their view is to sell him on a permanent deal anyway, then they're probably going to look for the deal that is financially best for them in terms of more money. The player's probably going to look at the deal that's financially best for him in terms of, wages and the challenge, effectively. It's more of a challenge coming to Everton than it will be for Palmer, because he's got to fight his way into the starting 11. But the earlier rumours from a couple of weeks ago stated that he wants to be guaranteed first team football. He wants to leave Bayern Munich to play, because he isn't playing at Bayern Munich. So what would be the point in him leaving somewhere where he isn't playing to join somewhere where he isn't playing? And of course, I'm not saying that, Joshua Zirkzee wouldn't play for Everton and he wouldn't start, but he'd have to fight his way into this team. Let's be perfectly honest. If Joshua Zirkzee signed for Everton next week, he wouldn't be starting in the Premier League, the game after, considering how well Dominic Calvert-Lewin is doing. He might play some Premier League games, he might start some Premier League games to allow Dom to sort of have that rest, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin is our number one striker, and Joshua Zirkzee would have to come in and impress and prove that he can challenge Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So that seems to be where it is on the Joshua Zirkzee front. It very much seems to be a 50-50 between Everton and Palmer. Palmer have offered him first team football, pretty much instantly, whereas Everton have offered him a different project. And the fact that Everton have offered him a different project and there's not been much detail into what Everton have offered him, the decision is still to be made and it's a work in progress, and the player seems to be happy with both options, it must mean that there's something in Everton's project and in Everton's plan that isn't involved in Palmer's, whether that's the chance to go and work under one of the best managers in world football in Carlo Ancelotti, whether that's the chance to play in the Premier League, or whether that's the opportunity for a 2-3 year project and a sort of a plan for him to develop as a footballer that wouldn't be available at Palmer. I don't know, but I'm really split on whether this one will happen or not, to be perfectly honest with you. I am. If you were to ask me now, would I bet on it happening? I'd say no, because again, it very much seems 50-50 as to where Joshua Zirkzee would want to go. Ultimately, at the end of the day, there was rumours a couple of weeks ago to state that his primary target is to go and play first team football and to be guaranteed first team football. And if that's the case, you're probably looking at Palmer as a better option. But he might have been swayed by whatever plan that Everton have put in front of him in terms of the future and playing Premier League football. And like I said, it also ultimately falls down to Bayern Munich. If their plan for Joshua Zirkzee is to sell him anyway, then again, they'll be looking at both offers on the table and weighing both offers up. If their option is for him to come back and they want him as part of Bayern Munich's future, then he's probably more likely to go to Palmer, because he's probably more likely to get the game time and the experience there. But it's a much more competitive league in the Premier League, and again, he'll be playing with, I'd say, a much higher level of opposition and teammates as well at Everton. That's no disrespect to Palmer. But ultimately, like I said, I think this is a 50-50. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with it. I don't want to say I'm not confident, but with these sort of situations, it's one of them. It's like, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. If this doesn't happen, I don't think Everton will sign somebody this window, to be perfectly honest with you. And it opens up the questions about the likes of Tosun, who we're going to move on to in just a second, and whether or not Everton should be selling Tosun if we're not going to be able to bring in Joshua Zirkzee, because then we will be stuck with just Dominic Calvert-Lewin as our only striking option. And I know Richarlison can move to be a backup striker if needed, but again, that just leaves us with two backup strikers there, where ideally we'd have another one in there, and Joshua Zirkzee would be the ideal player to come in. And if we can sell Tosun, make a little bit of money back on him, or even loan him out with an obligation to buy at the end of it, and we can bring in Joshua Zirkzee on whether it be a loan with an obligation to buy or a loan with an option to buy, then I think that's a positive move for the club. But ultimately, this decision falls down to the player, and it falls down to Bayern Munich as to where where they see Joshua Zirkzee's future. But that seems to be the latest, according to Fabrizio Romano, who is a very, very reliable source. He has said that Everton and Palmer are still working to sign Joshua Zirkzee. The race is open. Talks are at the final stage with Bayern Munich. Palmer offering him the chance for first team football, whereas Everton have a different project for him. It is a working project, and Max Bielefeld has said that it's a straight race between Everton and Palmer. Both clubs have made a formal bid of €10 million for the player, which includes a loan and either an obligation or an option to buy, and the player would be happy with both. So we'll just have to wait and see on this one. We will, of course, keep you updated on all of our socials regarding this. Twitter, if you don't follow us on Twitter, please do so. And of course, YouTube. As soon as any news breaks, we'll be on YouTube, we'll be live, we'll be covering it as we always do. Anyway, moving on now to an possible outgoing. According to Pete O'Rourke, Burnley are hopeful of securing a deal for Everton defender Jonjoe Kenny. There's been a lot of talk about Jonjoe Kenny and his future during this transfer window and whether or not he'll remain at Everton or whether or not he'll be moved on. Look, I think personally in terms of Jonjoe, it's not looking bit great for him, his future at Everton Football Club, even when Seamus Coleman's been out injured this season, and you know, Jonjoe's had his fair share of injuries this season as well, but there's definitely been times that he's been fit, and still, you know, Carlo Ancelotti has preferred Mason Holgate at right back, or Carlo Ancelotti has preferred Ben Godfrey at right back too. Jonjoe Kenny is not getting an awful lot of game time whatsoever. Obviously, he went out on loan last year to Schalke, done okay there, and I think if we can sell Jonjoe Kenny for what, between 6, 7, 8 million, something like that, I think it's a positive deal for the football club, because ultimately I think a right back is an absolute necessity, certainly for the summer transfer window. I think we need to be in the summer transfer window looking to bring in a right back. I know Max Aaron's name has been floated about an awful lot recently, and I think it's imperative for us this summer to go out and sign a number one right back, somebody like a Luca Dean, etc. Somebody like a Luca Dean, who we brought in 2018, and I don't necessarily mean somebody who plays like Luca Dean, but well, I suppose I do. What I'm talking about is a player that can come in and become our number one right back and ultimately allow Seamus Coleman to become the number two and to be the player that's on the bench and to be the player that maybe plays in the cup competitions or comes on every now and then. That's what we need, because at the moment Seamus can't play 38 games in a season. He hasn't got the legs, he hasn't got the stamina, and I know Mason Holgate's played at right back this season and done very, very well at right back, and maybe that's an option for Carlo Ancelotti to look at the end of the season when determining what we need in the summer transfer window. But personally, I think a right back is absolute priority number one. And the reality of the situation is with Jonjoe Kenny is he's not the future at Everton. He's obviously not deemed to be good enough by Carlo Ancelotti. I sort of agree, to be honest. I think he's a decent defender, Jonjoe Kenny. I think he's a decent Premier League defender, but I don't think he's a starter in a side that are fighting for the Champions League or a side that are fighting for, you know, league titles. And again, some people might listen and laugh at that, but ultimately Everton's goal is to fight for league titles in the coming years, is to fight in the Champions League, is to play competitive Champions League football. We haven't brought Carlo Ancelotti in to sit mid-table floating about not really doing much, and that's no disrespect to Jonjoe. I just don't think he's good enough to be a starter in a side that are playing Champions League football or fighting for league titles. I think he's a good enough player to play in the Premier League, and that is obviously why Burnley are after him and hopefully securing a deal for him. And I don't think this one will cause much issue. If this is strong interest and this is rumoured is to be true, then I can see this deal happening before the end of the transfer window. Ultimately, it works for all parties involved, doesn't it? It works for Jonjoe. He's going to go there and get first team football still in the Premier League. It works for Burnley. They're looking for a right back, like I said. He's a good right back. He's a good alternative. He's a decent player. Jonjoe Kenny, he is. He's got improvements to be made, but he still is, you know, quite young and can make those improvements. And ultimately, it works for Everton as well. If we can get a little bit of money back for a player that hasn't got a future at the football club, then, you know, why not do that? So that's the latest on Jonjoe Kenny. According to Pete O'Rourke, who is an independent journalist, he has said that Burnley are hopeful of securing a deal for Jonjoe Kenny in this transfer window. Moving on then to another possible outgoing. This one could have a detrimental effect on the deal for Joshua Zirkzee, and that is, according to The Athletic, CSKA Moscow have inquired to Everton about the potential of possibly signing Tosun on a short-term loan deal. This was released a day or so ago after another sort of publication released that CSKA Moscow were interested in the player. We then had a rumour today from Championat, and that was via Sport Witness, who said that Alisher Uzmanov could help CSKA Moscow to sign Everton striker Tosun, having previously aided the Russian side's capture of Nikola Vlasic in 2018. So it looks, as the days are going on, the more likely it is that Tosun will leave Everton Football Club. Of course, he wasn't involved in the matchday squad for the win against Sheffield Wednesday last Sunday, which was a surprise. Carlo Ancelotti didn't mention any injury to Tosun in the pre-game press conference, and ultimately, it was a cup competition and a side that you would have at least expected Tosun to be involved on the bench against. He wasn't in the squad whatsoever, and that leads you to only believe one thing, and that is that you know, his Everton future is very much on the ropes at the moment. CSKA Moscow are amongst a number of teams that seem to be interested in Cenk Tosun. Do I think this is a great deal for Everton? Yes, if we can sell Cenk Tosun on a permanent, that's much better for me, and maybe that's why the rumours are regarding Alisher Usmanov getting involved to maybe make this deal a permanent. Look, I don't want to talk too much on the Alisher Usmanov rumour because I don't really understand it. I don't understand why or what the necessity is for Alisher Usmanov to get involved, whether it's to give, say, CSKA Moscow a little bit more money to spend. I don't know, so I don't want to talk too much on that. I'm more focused on The Athletic, who of course are a very reliable source as well. The one that quoted the Alisher Usmanov stuff, I've never really heard of them before, so again, I wouldn't hold my breath listening to that one. But The Athletic are a very reliable source, of course, have Everton correspondents who work closely with the club, and they have said that CSKA Moscow have inquired to Everton about the possibility of signing Cenk Tosun on loan. Like I said, I'd prefer a permanent deal for Cenk Tosun. I'd prefer a deal which sees him leave the football club and us not have to pay his wages and make a little bit of money back on him. The issue with Cenk Tosun is he very nearly went to Crystal Palace at the end of last season for a transfer fee. That would have been absolutely amazing for Everton Football Club, but unfortunately he picked up that injury and you know, again, they didn't pursue that transfer because of that injury. Now it looks like a loan deal might be the best option for us at the moment, and then address Cenk Tosun's future in the summer when ultimately he returns from that loan deal. Again, like I said, this one hangs in the bag of the Joshua Zirkzee stuff for me. If Everton don't manage to sign Joshua Zirkzee, if he turns around and says, look, I want to join Parma because there's more first team experience there, then I don't know, do you still sell Cenk Tosun and leave Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison as our only strikers until the end of the season? Maybe you look at it and you think, look, we can't afford to, you know, miss up on the opportunity of moving Cenk Tosun on because he's not got a future at the football club, and if this opportunity arises, we have to take it. Maybe you look at it and go, no, it's only a loan deal. We're not going to be able to replace him in time, so just leave him here until the summer and then go again in the summer and try and get rid of him then. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But like I said, if we do allow Cenk Tosun to leave on loan, I would at least like to think the club of pretty confident in bringing in Joshua Zirkzee to sort of fill that place and replace him as the striking option. But again, like I said, it may be a case of Everton saying, look, this is an opportunity to, you know, sell a player or loan a player out with the possibility to sell, you know, we haven't had many offers for and who hasn't got a future at the football club. But it looks at the moment like that deal between CSKA Moscow and Everton would be a loan deal. Whether there'll be an obligation or an option to buy at the end of it, I don't know. But again, I think this is the correct deal if it's to be believed for everybody. Correct deal for Cenk. He can go and play in a league which is a little bit less physically demanding than the Premier League. He'll get more opportunities. He'll play more first team football. Also, the Euros coming up, which will be a massive thinking point for Cenk Tosun in terms of getting in Turkey's side and playing constantly in the European Championships. He won't want to be sitting on the bench for the remainder of the season if he can go and play somewhere else and ultimately you know, keep his fitness up and keep his goal scoring up ahead of the European Championships in the summer. And it's a right deal for Everton ultimately because he hasn't got a future at the football club, and if we can move him on, even if that is a loan deal temporarily, then that's probably the right option. If it's a sale and we can move him on permanently, perfect, absolutely perfect. But that is the latest on Cenk Tosun. There has been an update on Bernard. This is coming from Foosball Transfers again via Sport Witness, so probably not the most reliable source, but again, they have said that Bernard is set to join Al Nassr in Dubai on loan until the end of the season with an obligation to buy of €5 million. Now, this one probably is to be believed a little bit more because it was coming from Alan Myers and Sky Sports a couple of weeks ago that Al Nassr were interested in bringing in Bernard, and they were really, really keen on signing him on loan with an option to buy. I think it was rumoured around 10 million then, so it's dropped by half. I don't know why. But again, for me, a little bit of a difficult one this with Bernard, because a couple of weeks ago I said for £10 million to get a player who hasn't got a future at the football club, who's currently on over £100,000 a week within the last year of his contract, you know, was he late 20s, early 30s, again, it was the right deal for me. If we could get £10 million from Bernard, who ultimately come in for a free and make €10 million profit, that would be great. Now it appears to be €5 million. I'm not too sure why. And you're also sort of looking at it thinking, well, can we realistically afford to lose Cenk Tosun and Bernard, even though neither of those players have got a future at the football club, even though neither of those players are going to get a lot of game time this season? It's two players ultimately leaving a squad that we're not going to be able to replace. Now, maybe if we bring Joshua Zirkzee in, then the club can afford to move both players on and say, you know what, we can afford to do that. We're only effectively losing one player in the squad. But now, given the fact that the Zirkzee stuff is so up in the air at the moment and it seems to be a 50-50, can Everton afford to move both Bernard and Cenk Tosun on without directly replacing them? Because if we move Cenk Tosun on, then Richarlison becomes the backup striker. If we move Cenk Tosun on and we don't sign Joshua Zirkzee, then Richarlison becomes the backup striker, which we all spoke about before. So then if we move Bernard on, we need a backup winger. So who becomes the backup winger if we move Bernard on? You could say Anthony Gordon and Alex Iwobi are the two wingers. And then Richarlison's the backup striker. But I'd like a little bit more depth than that. And even though Bernard isn't fantastic and he's not consistent, I'd just like a little bit more depth than Anthony Gordon, who still is unproven for me, and Alex Iwobi, who plays week in, week out anyway, so he's not even a backup. Again, like I said, we've got Theo Walcott on loan, of course, to Southampton. He's probably going to leave in the summer. Bernard probably will leave in the summer if it's not this January transfer window. But I don't know. I suppose it's a question, isn't it? Listen, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'm really, really interested to hear your thoughts about this one. Would you be happy to move both Bernard and Cenk Tosun on in this window if we don't sign Joshua Zirkzee? If we do sign Joshua Zirkzee, then yeah, fine. We can move both players on if the deals are right. But if we don't sign Zirkzee, let's say tomorrow Joshua Zirkzee says, right, I've chosen Palmer, I want the first team football, and then we get an offer for both Bernard and Cenk Tosun, do we move both players on, or do we maybe move Cenk Tosun on and keep hold of Bernard until the summer? Because I think we're more likely going to be able to sell Bernard in the summer than we are Cenk Tosun, to be honest with you. I think it'll be harder to sell Cenk Tosun in the summer. But again, it's an interesting one, and it seems that Al Nassr of the Dubai League are still very interested in bringing Bernard in on loan and then with an option to buy. And then finally, Everton have shelved plans to sign goalkeeper Robin Olsen on a permanent deal from Roma until at least the end of this transfer window. It was spoken about quite heavily a couple of weeks ago about Everton wanting to bring Robin Olsen in on a permanent deal, and Carlo Ancelotti has said that is still the case. However, these talks won't begin with Roma until the end of this transfer window in the next couple of months or so. He said it's not really a priority at the moment, and although we do still want to make the deal permanent, those talks will begin after the January transfer window. So they're sort of put on the shelf at the minute. I dare say they've just been put in the background while we focus on other deals and maybe moving players out like Bernard and Cenk Tosun and John Joe Kenny, and even trying to bring somebody in like a Joshua Zirkzee. The Robin Olsen stuff is sort of just like it says in the article, according to the Liverpool Echo, just sort of being put on the shelf for the moment. And then that'll be picked up again in the next couple of months or so, because there's no real rush on that one. But there you go. That is the latest Everton transfer update regarding Joshua Zirkzee, John Joe Kenny, Cenk Tosun, Bernard. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. Obviously, it's match day. We will have the instant match reaction and the player ratings up a little bit later on, so don't forget to look out for those. Massive thank you for watching. Like I said, really do appreciate it. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you are enjoying these videos, I would really appreciate a subscribe if you haven't already. It means a great deal to me. Leave the video a like if you've enjoyed, and like I said, let me know your thoughts on all of the transfer rumours that we've spoken about in the comments. Big thanks for watching. I'll see you tonight, hopefully for a positive instant match reaction, hopefully for a positive player ratings, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.